Sorry. Okay, good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the November school board meeting. And as is our, what am I trying to say? Custom, thank you. It's been a long day. As is our custom, we would like to start with a word of prayer. Mr. Thompson.
If you would care to join me. Father, we are grateful for your provision for this school. It's been a challenging month, but we thank you that we'll be better for it. We pray for the families of the students who are no longer with us, and we pray your blessing on those families and how we can encourage them and support them during a tough time. Just pray that our administration and staff of those schools would be very present for those families. We pray for your guidance and your wisdom. In Christ's name, amen.
Okay, we will start with our recognitions, our favorite part of the meeting.
Are you driving? Thank you, sir.
This is most definitely our favorite part of the evening as we recognize students and staff who have excelled in any of our guiding principles. We'd like to start with individual student growth and recognize 4 students who are Central 9 Students of the Month for the month of October. We have Eric Ford in Criminal Justice. Hannah Thomas in Health Science 1. Josh Campbell in Work-Based Learning. And Nicholas Petroli in Culinary Arts 1. Perfect timing.
I came with my parents, Chris, Melissa, and my brother, Chris. We pretty much we have class first year does more of the hands-on and the learning, and then second year you do more of the investigating and stuff as criminal justice, and then we work out 3 times a week. We'll do Monday half day, Wednesday full day, and Thursday half day.
What are your future plans? What would you like to do after C9?
Probably going to go into the Marines as a dog handler.
Hello, my name is Nicholas Petroli. I'm in Culinary Arts 1. What we do is basically we run a restaurant called To the Nines, and there we're open Tuesdays and Fridays for the public, and everyone can come in and eat, and it's a really good experience because when you get to experience a restaurant and running a restaurant, and if you're wanting to go into the culinary arts world, it just helps so much because you have the experience of knowing how to run a restaurant. It's not just cooking. It's we learn measurements in the business side too. So it's we'll do Mondays is a Rotary Club. So today we prep for a Rotary Club was how do I explain it? It's just a whole bunch of business would come in and we'll serve them. And it's just a great experience to know how to run a restaurant and learn.
What are your future plans after C9 and Franklin High School?
Well, I would like to go to business school and learn how to run a restaurant, know the business side of it, and then go to culinary school at Benson's.
And who'd you bring with you tonight?
I brought my mom, my sister, a friend, and my cousin.
Well, congratulations. We'll get one picture. This is Mrs. Zahn, our school board president. Moms and dads, this is the time to get the cameras out and take a picture if you'd like. And also, Mrs. Zahn, if you want to take a picture of these kids, you're more than welcome. We'll send it up as well. Yeah. Why don't you come up here for the district one? This is Mrs. Odd for the Franklin people. She is the director of C9. And so she's going to present in a little while. So. All right.
Next, we'd like to recognize Adam Schwartz, who is our boys cross-country coach and also the Mid-State Conference Coach of the Year.
Congratulations. How many times have you won? Huh? This is a 5-time Mid-State Champion Coach of the Year, so congratulations. And how about your predecessor? How many do you have?
I don't know. We count girls and guys. It was a few.
You had a couple?
Yeah.
All right. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
We'll grab a picture here. I'll slide over. All right. Well done. Thank you.
Next, we had several teachers and administrators present at state and national conferences, and we'd like to recognize them for their expertise and their leadership. Katie Smith co-presented at the National NCTE Conference with Dr. Susan Crisafulli on improving childhood literacy through an elementary college partnership. That's the one coming up, isn't it? Saturday. All right. NCT is the National Council of Teachers of English. Thank you. And then Katie also co-presented with Megan Green and Nikki Sargent at the National NWEA Conference this past summer. And Katie, again, is co-presented with Dr. Kulik on using NWEA growth and goal setting into shifting the growth mindset at the Indiana School Boards Association Conference.
Want to do all of them? Sure.
Okay. Denise Rodenhoos is up next. Denise presented at the State Advanced Ed Conference on developing student evaluation so that they become proficient writers. Denise developed this activity last January to support our 3rd and 4th grade teachers and students in helping them learning to evaluate their own and someone else's writing. The highlights of her presentation was having Christina Smeckens attend, who was the keynote at the conference and is the writing guru, and we all do this to her when we see her. So she became Denise's best friend. And then lastly, we had several teachers present at the Google Leadership Symposium. We'd like to recognize those folks: Stephanie Simmer, Eric Jenkins, Matthew Smith, Sarah Records, and Megan Green. Thanks to all of you for sharing your expertise and representing Franklin Community Schools.
We have many outstanding teachers that work with our kids every single day. Our first guiding principle is individual student growth, and without great teachers, that doesn't happen. And this is just an example of sharing their knowledge with education and other leaders about how to get better, and our teachers are great. They all have standing room only when they present, and it's a lot of fun to see them engage with the adult learners as well as kid learners. So thank you very much for what you do, and we sure love all of you guys. And we got to squeeze in. We're getting from the picture side. Yeah. We could have 2 rows maybe. Let's see. Can we get everybody? Okay, we can get everybody. Mrs. Nell, you'd like to get in this one? Okay. Outstanding. I think that's correct. And I want to make sure that Mrs. Oddie is the director. I called you Ott twice because Christy Ott is my board president, so I apologize. Yeah. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody. Now it's a great time. If you're looking to segue, you're more than welcome to stay. But if you want to leave, it's a good time to exit out. Although we're gonna have great presenters coming up.
I don't know.
Unfreeze. Unfreeze. I learned. See, good thing I learned how to freeze. She was like, I know. I said, wait a minute. I think. Sorry.
And now we first have to get to consent agenda and all that stuff, so.
Okay,
All right.
are we ready?
Yep.
All right, well, first up on the agenda is public and board comments. If anybody in the public has a comment on anything on the agenda, you can step forward at this time. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to our board comments. We'll start with the Music Council.
Music Council just met this evening and, dealing with some storage issues and making some minor alterations and trailers and trucks and those kinds of things, doing some evaluation. Also trying to make sure we manage scheduling has kind of been at the top of their agenda. So that is an ongoing challenge. The Christmas programs are coming up soon. I think they're highlighted down at the bottom. And if you didn't go to the musical, it was your loss. So for any of you that went to the musical, I can let you know that it was an outstanding production. Just a little biased, but it was an outstanding production. So.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the Athletic Council.
We met this evening as well. The athletic group is wrapping up the fall season, getting ready for the winter sports. Really impressed with some of the numbers that Mr. Doty shared with us this evening. For the fall sports, we've got 20 all-conference athletes. We've got, and we're waiting on the county selections on that, so that's just all conference. The boys soccer team has got 12 players under the academic all-state for the athletics. And that's an average team average of a GPA of 3.4. So that's really something to congratulate that group with hard work, not only on the field, but here in the classrooms as well. Logan Snyder and Jonah Rocky made all Southeast All-Stars for tennis. And then Andrew Bixler was the state qualifier for the boys cross country. And that cross country team was sectional and regional champs. So pretty impressive fall wrap up on the sports events there. So well done to the school there.
Mr. Lamb, I believe the soccer team, and Mr. Doty stepped out, placed, I think, in the top 100 in several state region. I just saw that with the boys, with their GPA, their academic success. So just outstanding in what they did, what they do in the classroom and also on the field. So.
And Owen Atkinson, who is one of the soccer players, will be named the Player of the Year in soccer here coming up. So again, another high mark for that club.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Legislative Council.
We didn't meet as a council. We had any updates? David? General?
For legislative, yeah, we're talking about the soccer. Steve, was the top 20, and do you remember what the soccer, the email we received? I think it's a Midwest region. They were one of the top academically. We just received that just the other day. That's what we're chatting about.
No.
Go ahead.
No. We didn't meet as a legislative council, but I didn't know if there was anything.
I do have a couple things. I want to just highlight school calendar is going to be on the docket. That is going to continue to be a prevailing wind. And it looks like that the legislation is going to state that we cannot start school before the last Monday in August. And last I heard, there'll be no end date. They're going to let the schools decide when school would end. So we know it's 180 days. We'll find out. They're also saying that they do have enough votes to make this happen. So if that's the case, we'll get back with you. Mrs. Nally will reconvene through surveys and et cetera about a committee. That's one thing. The other one, the governor just came out with his initiative, and workforce development was a big part. Actually, he didn't talk about education hardly at all, but you have to see the elements inside of that. A couple highlights. One, multiple computer engineering and application courses would be required at the high school level. We talked about that today. Also, STEM education K-12 would be on the forefront for Governor Holcomb's request. He's going to set up a couple councils as well on career pathways that would be opportunities to engage both local and regional about that. So those are some big things, because I think what you'll see with that initiative, it would go through, once again, to be some unfunded mandates that we would get to deal with, and Mr. Ahaus would quickly figure out how to adapt to those. And the career side also impacts all the way down in the STEM education, all the way down in the place. So those are a couple of things legislatively.
But why are they, calendar-wise, why are they doing it?
They're saying that they want the kids to have time in August, but the real force deals with tourism on both ends of the state. The group near Michigan's already gone to it, and down in the southern part with Holiday World. They have big groups that they want to push it forward.
I think the State Fair has a lot to do with it.
State Fair, yeah.
So,
But
and when would that take effect?
that's another good question. Early on, we heard it was going to be maybe for next year, but the last thing I heard was they would give grace, and like for us, would have a calendar already in place, but they wouldn't require that. So that's one of those, I think, negotiation things with legislators. Mr. Young, do you have any insight down there on your end with someone that you know that works closely on this?
Well, I can tell you that he is following this issue very closely and is looking forward to receiving input from you folks so that he can be better guided to do the right thing up there. So stay in touch.
All right, thank you. Superintendent Strategic Task Force.
We're set to meet right in 2018 in January, and looking about the initiative dealing with the Title IV grant on innovation. So keep you posted on that.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent Strategic Plan Projects.
I'll defer to Mr. Mercer on this one.
The Employer of Choice project is advancing. We've met twice. They're broken into subcommittees at this point. We have a broad cross-section of all employee groups. They're off and running. We have a vision established. We have 3 core tenets, and they have begun work. So as we progress, I'll continue to keep you posted on that.
Okay, thank you.
We are looking at also just on that superintendent strategic planning projects, looking at a winter retreat that we'll talk to kind of pencil in, but we can all get back together to have more information. Remember, coming off the summer, we talked about having quarterly updates on how we're doing and what we're doing. And we're looking at December 4 or 5th, I think, was what we in central office were looking at. So if we could actually look at your calendars for that, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. Communications Committee, we met. We looked at some different tools that would help us better engage with parents and the community, and it would also let them get feedback from us. And I don't know, did you and Mrs. Betts see another presentation last week?
We saw Let's Talk from K-12 Insight. Fort Wayne Schools is probably the closest that uses them. And it really is, it's a two-way portal for schools to send out information, but also for parents to report back. And then it's a little more seamless in tracking. It was good information. I think she's planning to bring it to the communication committee when we meet next. The thought exchange, I think they're still thinking about us. They have not responded back the last I've heard to the request that she sent out.
Okay, thank you. The next is collective bargaining.
Not bad.
Right. Central 9.
I was not able to attend last week's meeting, but we have Central 9 well represented tonight who will give us a presentation. So we'll defer to that.
Very good. RDC.
I was not able to attend the last meeting, but I have gotten the unofficial minutes. I've emailed them to each of you.
Okay.
So if you want to, it doesn't seem that there was much on there that would affect the schools, but you can get your latest RDC news from that.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any comments or questions?
I have one comment under personnel. Mr. Rod Snyder is stepping down from tennis. I believe this is year 15 for Rod to be our head tennis coach, so we want to thank him for his years of service in the boys program. They had a great success. I think with his son graduating this year, I think he thinks it's a good time to let somebody else take over. But we wanted to just say thank you to him for all of his years of service and his success.
Very good.
Move for approval.
Okay, we have a motion. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, seeing none, the motion passes. We will move on to superintendent reports, the 10X presentations.
As you know, our 10X are looking at how to do something both professionally, but also to help in the classroom with their jobs. So we have two outstanding individuals to represent that this time. Angie Andrews is going to come up and speak first. Angie had quite the experience, and she's going to talk a little bit about engaging and growing in the world of Title I.
Okay, so I just want to start by saying that I'm going to talk really fast because, well, I only have 10 minutes. And also because I'm really very, very nervous. And also, you're probably going to hear me say the words beautiful, incredible, and amazing a million times, and I apologize for that. So when we pull kids for reading interventions, they typically miss science and social studies time. And these are two subject areas that you can easily hook an otherwise reluctant learner. So because they miss this time, I try to incorporate that into reading interventions that we do while focusing on fluency, comprehension, and decoding the subject content. We read volcanoes, endangered animals, different biomes, and different cultures. So the first part of my grant was about student engagement. I wanted to add some experiences to my schema that would help me to be more effective in keeping them engaged in the things that we read about. So I wanted to be able to share with them firsthand what I saw, what I heard, and what it felt like to be there. So in the short time that I was in Hawaii, I learned and experienced so very much. The flowers were unbelievably beautiful. One of the things that I learned is that in the Hawaiian culture, one of the reasons that women wear flowers in their hair is actually an indication of their relationship status. So if they wear a flower tucked behind their left ear, because that's the ear that's closest to their heart, then that means that they're taken, and a flower behind their right ear means that they are single. I saw lots of really incredible trees and plants, the banana trees, bamboo fields, papaya trees, succulents, the bamboo or the banyan trees were absolutely my favorite. They're so incredible. So it starts by a seed landing on the branch of another tree, and it germinates there, and that's the roots that grow down into the ground. Eventually, it ends up strangling and killing its host tree, but they're still really cool.
That's another story.
I absolutely love to hike, and Hawaii, oh my goodness, there were so many phenomenal places to hike. And depending on where you were at on the island, you got a completely different experience. So hiking along the coast is very rocky. These pictures are from Kaena Point, which is the northwesternmost part of the island. Hiking the mountains was absolutely incredible. And after that, I definitely created a greater appreciation for switchbacks because the mountain trails in Hawaii tend to go straight up.
Which island was this?
Oahu.
Oahu.
Mm-hmm. I did some rainforest hikes. It was very beautiful. The waterfalls were absolutely brilliant. I really, really loved learning about Hawaii's history. So the top three pictures are of Kaneakapuku, the ruins. That's the summer home of King Kamehameha III, and he entertained a lot of people there. One of the biggest was a luau where he served like 10,000 people. It was crazy. The picture on the bottom, those are of the Pali Lookout, and there's kind of a sad story. So King Kamehameha I, he ruled over the Big Island, and he had this great idea that he wanted to conquer each of the other islands one by one so that he could create one royal kingdom. When he got to Oahu, he drove the Oahu forces out into the Pali Lookout, where they were all killed or forced over the side of the cliff. That was really interesting. I visited the Byodo-in Temple, which is a smaller replica of a Buddhist temple in Japan. And they built it in 1968 to commemorate the 100-year anniversary of the Japanese immigrants coming to Hawaii. These are just some random pictures of things that I found walking along the beach, some coral, a coconut covered in barnacles, and then some surfers at the Bonsai Pipeline. The sea life, the wildlife, was incredibly amazing. I saw sea urchins and man-o-war. I actually got stung by a man-o-war, and even if the locals tell you how they think you should treat the wound, I wouldn't follow their advice. I just went and got vinegar and meat tenderizer, and it worked well. There's also, I saw crabs. The middle pictures, I spent a day with a lady that works at the Hawaii Marine Mammal Alliance, and they do work to protect sea turtles and the endangered monk seal. The monk seal is found only around the Hawaiian Islands, and there are only about 1,400 of them left. So when they have one that comes up on a really crowded beach, whether they're molting or just sunning, they'll kind of rope off the area so people can keep a safe distance and not bother them. And then they also take time to educate the public on ways that they can protect and preserve them. The bottom left is a little selfie with me and a sea turtle. It was kind of hard to see. The baby gecko, he was so cute. He was on top of a cork. People in Hawaii absolutely love the geckos because they eat the cockroaches. And after I saw the size of one of the cockroaches, I liked the geckos too. So, and chickens are everywhere. Even at the schools that I visited, they're just all over the schoolyards, just everywhere. It was really bizarre to see. Here are some more sea turtles. I had probably the most incredible experience that I had was when I took the day trip to the Big Island. I was at a black sand beach, and a lady that was there had pointed an area where she had saw some sea turtles. Well, to get there, I had to climb down some rocks, take off my shoes, walk through about mid-calf 10 foot of water, and climb up over some other rocks to get to a cove. And there were about 8 of them just swimming around, and they were so majestic. So after I took some pictures and watched them, I started to walk back. When I got to the water, I realized that the tide had come in, and it had come in very quickly. So the water was now mid-thigh, and it was coming from both sides around the rocks, and it was very, very strong. And so I was being very careful, and I saw something out of the corner of my left eye, and I looked down, and this humongous sea turtle swam his flippers were like an inch away from my legs. It was, words cannot describe what I felt at that moment. It was amazing. So I made a lot of friends everywhere I went. Everybody was so kind. The guy in the top right corner, he's actually the restaurant owner at a Filipino restaurant, and he was really sweet, but he was a little tricky, and I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. The guy in the middle, his name was Mr. Joe, and he is a veteran that served as a pilot in 3 wars, Vietnam, Korea, and World War II. It was really an incredible honor to get to meet him. I have to say that when I visited Pearl Harbor, I had very little background knowledge of what actually happened that day. I knew that the Japanese attacked, and I knew that people died, and that's really all I knew. I learned so very much, but the story that stuck with me the most was of the USS West Virginia. It was hit by 6 torpedoes, 2 bombs, and burned for 30 hours. In the days following the attack, when Marines were on night duty, they would hear a bang, 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 and they realized that it was men that were trapped in the ship. I'm gonna cry. They couldn't get them out. If they cut into the ship, then they risked sinking it completely, and if they used a torch, then they risked an explosion. So the banging finally stopped on Christmas Eve. Months later, when the salvage crews came and pulled her out of the waters, they did find the bodies of 3 soldiers in an airlock in a storage room where there was a calendar and they had marked off each day. And so they lived for 16 days trapped in there after the attacks. I was also able to visit the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific. It's actually located inside a crater in Punchbowl Crater, and the walls of the memorial have the names of 28,000 military members who've been missing in action, lost, or buried at sea during different battles of the Pacific from World War II through Vietnam. Now, as much as I love hiking, I love food even more. And I ate and ate and ate. I tried so many different things. I really stepped out of my comfort zone. I thought that the coconut milk would be amazing. It was absolutely disgusting, but it was $6, so I sucked it down anyway. I visited Matsumoto's on the North Shore. It's world famous shaved ice. Everybody has to have it. Had some mazzolatas, tried Korean barbecue for the first time. The bottom right is a picture of some food from a traditional luau. I tried poke and poi and taro pudding and lomi salmon, just everything they had, I tried it. The picture above that, though, this is where the really nice gentleman that was very tricky comes in. So I went into his restaurant one day, and I'd never even been in a Filipino restaurant before. I didn't know what anything was, and I would just point to it, and he would say beef, pork, beef, pork. This went on for a while, and he finally fixed a platter for me, and he sat and talked to me while I ate it, and he was really kind. But when I was done eating, he was even more kind to tell me exactly what it was that I ate. And I will say that the thing on the very far left is tripe. It's like a stew made of cow stomach, the lining of the stomach, and cow bile. So that was very interesting. I visited Hanama Bay, where I got to snorkel. It was it's a coral reef that's formed inside a volcanic cone. I also went to the Polynesian Cultural Center. I learned a lot about the culture of 6 different Polynesian islands. It's located in a town called Laie. And Laie is actually the home where the Shaka sign originates. So the story behind that is there was a gentleman who worked at the sugarcane mills, and he lost his 3 middle fingers. After the accident, they shifted his job, and his job was to monitor the train tracks. Well, he was always waving at kids to get off the tracks or waving at the train drivers to keep going. And so the locals picked it up, and it just kind of became a greeting after a while. I also visited Volcano National Park on the Big Island, which is home to the largest volcano, Mauna Loa, and the most active volcano, Kilauea. Kilauea has been erupting since 1983. I got to take a close look at it and visit the steam vents, the lava fields, and the lava tubes. So the second part of my grant was student growth. I wanted to visit some Title I schools that have shown growth to see what they were doing in their classrooms and the kind of interventions. I visited Haleiwa Elementary, Laie Elementary, and Helemano Elementary. I saw some really good things going on at the school, all the schools. One thing that really that I noticed first was that the atmosphere was completely different in the classrooms. It was very quiet. You didn't see kids fidgeting or moving about or it seemed like they didn't have any problems staying focused. I don't know if that's a cultural thing, if it's just the laid back island life, but it was really different to see that. Another thing that I noticed was that their level of writing was phenomenal. And I really think that a big part of that had to do with the fact that all the schools I went to used speaking stems and accountable talk on a regular basis. So that forced them to support their claims with evidence and to just respect other people's views. There were posters everywhere. They had reminders on each of their desks. And so I believe that if we can teach kids to speak smarter, that they can write smarter. I also really liked they all use the Wonders curriculum. And the thing I liked most about it is that they had a companion book called Wonder Works that they used in their interventions and in their SPED groups. So it's the same lesson, the same story that the kids had already heard in the whole group, but it really allows them to dig deeper into the text, and it helps to reinforce and build on what they have already learned in the whole group lessons. So just some random Aloha pictures. I had an amazing time and I learned so very, very much, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
You still have your YouTube channel? Yeah. Another thing that she didn't talk about, but while she was there, she had a YouTube channel, and she would talk to the kids and the teachers about the learning experience that was going on. So I got to see a couple of those as Angie held them up and said, "Here's what she's doing today." So it was great. So.
Okay, thank you. Mandy Walls.
All right. Good evening. My name is Mandy Walls. I'm going to have to stand over here because I don't like to be hidden. I teach at Custer Baker, and I teach 5th grade high ability language arts. And our language arts curriculum is based on Latin stems. It's based on Latin stems. And so we spend a lot of time talking about Latin words like indolent, how the word in means not and dol means pain. So indolent, being lazy, means that I don't want to be in pain. So every word that we study has a stem that helps to understand that meaning. And it comes back to a program that's called Caesar's English. And so through the program that we do, we study a lot about Caesar and Julius Caesar, who lived in, well, he was killed in 44 BC. Then later, Shakespeare wrote the play Julius Caesar. So because we study so much of that, I really wanted to go to London myself and to explore this. Plus, in doing my ancestry, I found out that my family are the Willoughbys. My great-grandmother was a Willoughby, and they came on the ship in 1610 that saved Jamestown. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I knew I was quite English. So I've always had this draw for this. So let's see. This is my shutterfly. Here we go. Okay, so first we had to learn how to navigate the tube, which is the underground system, subway system there. And so that was pretty fascinating to see how people got around. You could go anywhere in the city with the tube. We never had to take a cab or anything. We went to Kensington Palace first, and the Princess Diana Memorial Gardens. So it was beautiful there. This was inside. We got to see the King's Gallery and all of there were King's Quarters and Queen's Quarters from a long time ago, but they still do hold events there. This is a funny this is how they used to have dresses when the women would get beautiful silks. They would make dresses like this, and then they would go to the party and they would stand in the middle of the room and everybody could come by and just touch the silk. I thought that was pretty fascinating. We got to go to the Globe Theater. So the Globe Theater is in London, and that's where Shakespeare would perform. This is a replica of that, but we got to go in during the time when they were actually performing and see the inside. We weren't allowed to take pictures, but I did kind of cheat with my 360 camera several times because you could just go and it didn't look like a camera. But I got that one off the internet, but that's what it looks like inside. So it's open to the outdoors because they didn't have electricity back in the late 1500s. We went to an old pub called Ye Old Cheshire Cheese. And this was built in 1667, which was after the Great Fire of 1666. And it's been around ever since. So Charles Dickens and all kinds of people have spent time in this pub. It was really neat. This is walking along the Thames River. This is the London Tower. This is the Tower of London, and if you've heard of this, it was built in 1066, which is William the Conqueror, and it's been around since then. And so people have lived there. The crown jewels are here, which I'll get to here in a minute, but it just was amazing. This is where people, Queen Elizabeth I was kept here in prison in one of the towers. This is what it looks like from an aerial view, which I did not take. That's also from the internet. King Edward I lived there. This is really fascinating because for centuries, people were held in the towers, and then they would carve their names in there. So they would put little plaques up to tell who the people were that had stayed in there and what they were convicted of and if they were executed or not. The beefeaters, if you've heard of them, they are the men who take care of the tower, and so they still live there. They live there with their family. And you can see the little picture over there. That's where the apartments are, but they still take care of the place. The men with the red with suits and the big tall hats. So they still take care of the place. Oh, and they're called beefeaters because a long time ago, they got to eat a lot of fancy meat when most people only got bread. So there's some more pictures of that. Oh, here was the school. I was really excited because I saw the School of London right there on the river. And I thought that was kind of neat to imagine kids just walking through town and going to school right there on this famous river. Westminster Abbey was amazing. I don't even think I could describe how when you first walk in, of course, it's the big arch and it's beautiful, but then down along the side are the tombs. And you can see here, that top one was Queen Elizabeth I. So I could not believe I was standing there where Queen Elizabeth I was buried. And these are stories that my kids love to hear when we start talking about history and all of the monarchs. But as you walk along the side, it's just tomb after tomb of famous people. Buckingham Palace, we got to see changing of the guard. When they're finished, they walk out and it's the whole pomp and circumstance. I mean, they do the band and then the military comes. It's very imposing with the guns and the sound. And one of my favorite is Queen Victoria. And I remember when I went to a course one time when I learned how to do discipline, and one of the presenters would say to stare at them like you're Queen Victoria. And she gives this look all the time. You know, that's how you look at kids to get them to get back in order. So I had to get my picture taken with her. We also went on a bike tour, and our tour guide took us all over. He put a radio on the back of his bike, and we listened to the Beatles and rode all through town. Yeah, and took us to now. He was talking so fast I couldn't pick up on what all these places were, but apparently they're important. We met some people from New York. We were at a pizza place and we just started talking. And so we hung out with them one night and that was kind of fun. We got to go to the Churchill War Rooms, which was it's underground at Whitehall. It's one of their government buildings. And what had happened was after World War II, when Churchill was down below taking care of his country, once the war was over, they just left everything. And so for decades, it just sat down this big bunker where all of the government officials were and all the military trying to take care of the country. And it was fortified down there. So what they did is they went back in not too long ago and made it into a museum. So it's all set up basically like it was before. Here's the building. And it was underground. And here you can see on that side, well, maybe, how the ceiling is fortified. So that was really neat. We took a little rest at this place called a banqueting house where you could sit and look at lay on bean bags, look at the ceiling. Good old Benjamin Franklin, got to go to his house. That was exciting. And then we took a train up to Stratford-upon-Avon. So this is where we were able to see Shakespeare's birthplace. I was so excited when we first got off the train that I took off running, and not really running, but walking very quickly. And I fell with my arms like straight down by my side. So my husband always teases about how excited I was to see Shakespeare's birthplace. I couldn't wait to get there and tripped over my own feet. But yeah, so this was, he lived in the 1500s. So to see a house that was still fairly intact from the 1500s. You know, we just don't see that in America. Shakespeare wrote many plays, and when he died, all of his friends put together what was called the first folio, and so it's all of his plays. And this was a copy right here of the actual one of the first folios that they put together. So that was fun to share with my kids. Here are some other pictures. This birth room window is where when a child was born and people come in to visit the child, they carve their name into the window. And so there were still, you know, it was still there, and you were able to see the different carvings in there. This is where Shakespeare retired. And his neighbor was a physician who actually ended up marrying his granddaughter and lived in this fancy house because he was a physician. We got to go to the church to see where he was buried. And here is the church, and here he is buried right up on, you know, where they do the services. And so he's just buried right in there. He was already famous when he died, and so he got the prime spot. So he's right there. And he did write, "Good friend, for Jesus' sake forbear to dig thee something enclosed here. Blessed be the man who spares these stones, and cursed be he who moves my bones." So no one has ever moved his bones. He and his wife and his daughter there. And then this was probably the highlight of my trip. Since I teach all about Julius Caesar and I teach about Shakespeare, I got to go see the play Julius Caesar at the Royal Shakespeare Company. And if you don't know, that is a big deal. I mean, to go to the Royal Shakespeare Company, and for the week that I was there, for them to be showing or performing Julius Caesar. I mean, I could never get that lucky. So it was amazing. I mean, to get to see the story, I'd read it because I teach it, but you know, there's nothing like seeing it in person. So I was able to capture some of the scenes here when he was assassinated by the senators that were his peers because he was basically becoming too big for his britches. So that was just amazing. And it's right there in Stratford. Here's a proper English breakfast. You get beans and ham and sausage and eggs and mushrooms and tomatoes, and amazing. Then we went on the Tower Bridge one day. Right here is the Tower Bridge. It was built in the 1800s, and it does open up so that ships can get through, and it was run by steam. There's my husband and myself up on this top part, and you can see the street below. So I did not look down. Let's see, Tower Bridge. We also went on a ship that was used during World War II. Got to go all through that. I am a Downton Abbey fan, if anybody's ever seen that. So this was on my own dime. My own dime. We went on a Downton Abbey tour to where they filmed different film locations. But the biggest was that you got to go to Highclere Castle. And this is, it's the home of Lord and Lady Carnarvon, and it's been the home of the Carnarvon family since 1679. So he is the 8th Earl of Carnarvon. So this has been passed down generation to generation, and this is where they filmed Downton Abbey. And so, yeah, we got to go inside. This is the Lord and Lady right here, also taken from the internet. We were not allowed to take pictures in there, so I took a couple here to show you. The grounds were beautiful. We went for a walk down through the gardens, and we could see, I just kept taking pictures as the castle faded from our view. Okay, and sorry, I do have one more over here. Got to get to the Roman baths. Hold on, this one out. Sorry. There we go. All right. I had so many pictures, I had to make a second scrapbook. Then we went to Windsor. We got to see Windsor Castle. This is what that looks like from the aerial view. That's where the Queen lives today. We saw the crown jewels. Actually, the crown jewels were at the Tower of London, and this was kind of neat. These crowns have been passed down for hundreds, well, really probably some of the jewels are thousands of years old. But when you go in to see the crown jewels, you are on a little escalator, and it's just all lined up right here in a case, and you just move along on the escalator, and just that's all you're allowed to see. You just keep moving. That was kind of for my kids to show them who she was and when she wore the crown. We went to Bath, which is in England, and got to see the Roman baths. So here was another thing that fit with my curriculum. We talk about the architecture of the Romans and how they build the aqueducts and just how amazing and inventive they were. And so for me to get to see that and share it with them, and we did that today. They loved it. So there are the baths, more of those. We spoke with this man who had lived in Bath all of his life, and he had such a thick English accent that we could hardly understand him. Then we got to go to Stonehenge. And again, it just, it's on this giant plain. You just don't really envision that when you see it in the textbooks, but there was Stonehenge. We rode the London Eye, and there was Big Ben. And then we went to one more little pub. So, and then at the end, I was really frustrated because we had to spend the night in Canada without our luggage. So my husband was trying to take my picture, and I was saying no. So overall, though, we had the most amazing trip you could ever have. The weather was beautiful, and we are so lucky. So thank you so much for getting the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is the Central 9 Work Ethic Program with Mrs. Oddie and Mrs. Northcutt.
First off, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Clendenning and the board for allowing us the opportunity to share a program that we're very excited about. It's our Work Ethic Certification Program. We started last September kind of researching and investigating some ways that we could recognize our students and tie our business partners together. And about the same time we were doing kind of a roundtable of business and industry partners, we also learned that there was a grant opportunity from the state, and we applied for that grant and received it. We were one of 18 out of 40 some applicants to receive that grant. So we're excited to be able to implement it. And I think part of the reason we were chosen is that we were able to say that we are going to implement this not only at Central 9, but going forward, it's something we can share with all of our sending schools. Since starting at Central 9, I just want to add, you will have a packet regarding the Work Ethic Impact program. Impact is the name that our business community and partners came up with as to how we would recognize character traits in students. And that stands for integrity, motivation, professionalism, adaptability, communication, and teamwork. And our students at Central 9 actually designed the logo and the tagline, and we have ran with that. It is not just for our work ethic certification, we're using it in all of our vision and mission statements, recognizing our students in multiple ways. But I'm going to leave it up to my team to kind of share with you some of the information and the specifics on the program. Starting off is B. Northcutt, our workplace, our work ethic certification project implementation specialist.
And actually, it's Allison who's going to start off.
Okay, start it out. All right. Good evening. I'm Allison Nam. I'm the College and Career Pathways Counselor at C9. I wanted to talk a little bit about recruitment first. As far as recruitment went, we had a big meeting with all juniors to, just introduce the topic of what it was, all of that. From that meeting, we also sent out parent letters to all of their parents. I think it was over 400 letters that went out, and explaining what the work ethic certificate would look like and the benefits, the incentives, all that good stuff. So from there, over the summer passed, and then we had an open house in August where we had another parent meeting. We talked about the work ethic, and from that evening, we had students signing up right away. So we had enrollment for the work ethic. It was about a week or two it was open. And from that, 180 enrollees are now in our program, which is wonderful. As far as students that have stayed into the program, because it's based off of discipline, attendance, all that good stuff, we still have a high number of students that are eligible to earn this certificate. We not only count attendance, grades, all that stuff at C9, but we also count that at the home schools. So we go through and check records. We'll probably be doing that at semester to check, to make sure that they are maintaining those standards at both places. As far as that, we've been advertising through Aspire. We have some really great community members on board, and we meet quarterly as far as our advisory board goes. And from there, I will pass it off to B. Northcott.
Great. I am the project implementation specialist for this, but we've been working since February. We got the grant at the end of last year, and we started implementing it in February. We have a 40-member advisory council, which is made up of school representatives, businesses, community representatives. Casey Murphy is the Franklin Community Schools representative on the advisory council. And so we also have C9 students, parents, and C9 faculty. So they're the ones who came up with the work ethic, the employability skills that became impact. The state mandated the attendance, the disciplinary referrals, the GPA, and the 6 hours of community service. So what we've been doing a lot in the last 6 months is recruiting various partners to be our partners with the Work Ethics Certificate Program. So we have 3 levels of partners. That's the additional information that I provided, because that's a fluid document. We're always adding new business partners, new community service partners, and new ambassadors. So business partners are those entities that can hire students coming right out of Central 9 in areas like HVAC and culinary and those kinds of things that C9 has the academic programs in. We currently have, actually, you have a list of 27. We now have 28 business partners, because since I printed that off this morning, we have another business partner. That's why it's a very fluid document. So we're focusing on those businesses that can hire C9 graduates now, but as we roll it out to the 9 sending schools next year, we're going to recruit more businesses that are interested in providing incentives. And the incentives that they provide to our students are things like a preferred applicant pool, a guaranteed job interview, tuition reimbursement, an extra day's vacation at the end of a certain period of time of employment, flexible scheduling, mentoring opportunities, and the like. So that's entirely up to the business as to what incentives they want to provide. We also have currently 16 community service partners, and those are nonprofit agencies that will accept teenagers to do the 6 hours of community service that are mandated by the governor's Work Ethics Certificate Program. So the students can choose their own community service, or they can look on the calendar that's on our website, or they can look at the list of community service partners that have those opportunities available. So those were the first 2 partner lists. Then we realized there was a whole nother section of partners that we weren't reaching, and those are things like the chambers of commerce, schools of higher education, the cities, and things like that. So we have now an ambassador partner list. So we have 6 ambassador partners. For instance, IUPUC is looking forward to, if students who are not looking to go into the workforce want to go to IUPC, they're offering extra points on admission if a student has the work ethics certificate. They are talking about offering scholarships to students that have the work ethics certificate. So we're really trying to leverage that kind of information so that we can go to the other schools and say, hey, these places are doing this as well. So we have about 30% of the students in senior class enrolled in the program this year. We're looking forward to rolling it out to all of the sending schools next year. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and he'll give you more information about the curriculum and the rollout.
Hello, I'm Mike Quaranto, Assistant Director at Central 9. There is a curriculum component to the work ethic certification. Being a career and tech center, a lot of the employability skills are already taught through our classes, but we're using the YES curriculum, which stands for Youth Employability Skills. It was developed by a team of educators at Hoosier. Additional information in their classes. We do have a weekly calendar where each week we focus on a different skill. That might be communication, resumes, critical thinking, problem solving, teamwork. We also implemented an impact grade in all of our courses that count for 30% of the grade. And the teacher uses a rubric, 60 points per week, and based on those 6 traits of impact. Sending school rollout plan. We've already been talking with principals at our quarterly principal meeting. That first meeting took place at the end of September. The beginning of November, and we'll have a joint meeting with principals and counselors and superintendents, curriculum directors to roll that out and present a plan for implementing it in our sending schools next school year. Something that we do need to consider as we move forward is getting together, looking at discipline and attendance, because each school does have different policies, and part of earning the work ethics certification is having less than 1 or fewer discipline referrals. Well, you can't have more than 1, I should say. And then attendance must be at 98%. So looking at what qualifies as an excused absence and what does not. We'll continue to meet with the group, our advisory council. We'll continue to meet with principals, curriculum directors, and counselors to get this implemented in our schools next year. Do you guys have any questions?
I believe you have 27 or 28 Franklin High School kids, is that correct?
I want to say Franklin Community has one of the higher levels.
Yeah, I don't have those stats right in front of me. That was on the other slide.
I know when you guys spoke the other day,
yeah,
it was in the 20s.
It's a higher number.
29?
Yeah. And out of the
Outstanding.
percentage of students that come to C9, that's a very high percentage.
Yep.
Yes, one of the highest.
When we were looking at how many students we wanted to have enrolled in this program, we were hoping to get 50% of the seniors at C9 this year. We got 31%, and we were a little disappointed with that until we started talking to other schools throughout the state and found out that they had lower percentages. So we felt a little bit better with our 31%. But we're learning from that, and we'll be able to provide additional information to the schools as the rollout to get more students and to incentivize them in terms of enrolling in the program. Thanks for the opportunity to present.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to graduation pathways. Dr.
This
Clendenin.
segues quite nicely to the graduation pathways. And I'm not going to read. I'm just going to highlight the first 2 parts, and then I've asked Mrs. Nally to step in on the assessment piece. We are moving to a new curriculum for graduation pathways for our 7th grade students. When the 7th graders graduate, they will have had to adhere to these elements. There are 3 domains that we're looking at. One is a traditional high school diploma, where we're getting 42 or 47 credits depending on your coursework, and we'll continue to look at that. The second piece is to learn and demonstrate employability skills. Mrs. Oddie and her team would help with this piece right here. As we looked at the impact, that would qualify for what we're talking about to check off for the kids in the graduation pathway. Another opportunity would be a project-based learning. A lot of schools, Greenwood being one of them that nearby, have the seniors do an exit project where the kids have to have a culminating cornerstone piece, and that would be one thing that would be required of all seniors in order to graduate at some point in time if they would choose that. And the other one would be a work-based component where the students would actually go out and get work in a certain field or endeavor that would follow their pathway. Those are elements that are coming. Now, those all sound wonderful, and they're great, but the question that we have is, how do we monitor and secure that? So that's going to be one of the things that we're talking about in the future. Is this is going to probably be additional bodies to help Mr. Ahouse and his team gather all this information for our over 400 students going to be in that graduating class, because every one of them will have to have an aspect of this, or they will not get the diploma as we know it today. So that's an important piece. And then the readiness component, do you want to just talk briefly?
Again, they've added the third part, which is the readiness component. And at this point in time, we don't think this is the funded part, but another requirement where all of our students would have to have at least one of these options, have taken the ACT, the SAT, and scored a specific benchmark on those tests, or the ASVAB, or have the industry credentialing, like we just heard, or have a sequence of a CTE class of 6 credits or 3 classes, or have an AP dual credit, which is all we offer out of that bullet so far, and earn a 3 or higher and have a C in those classes. So it's going to be tons of record keeping, tons of preparation as we move forward in getting this current 7th grade class ready, and tons of communication, not only to students, but also to parents and teachers, making sure everyone is on board. I think David said this earlier, but some of the requirements from this diploma have trickle-down effects that will impact the middle school, intermediate school, and even the elementary schools. And some of the offerings and things we'll need to do to make sure students are prepared.
One of the software pieces that we use presently at the high schools is a resource called Naviance. It's a career inventory, but it's also a warehouse for our e-transcript and many other things. In the state plan, Naviance will be used all the way down into middle school and grades, and also maybe 5 and 6, to do career inventory. And as they come into high school, that's going to help create their path, their pathway that they're looking at. I want to also highlight this CTE concentrator, because right now we would not have anybody unless they choose to come up and be with the Central 9 offerings that would qualify for that. Project Lead the Way is one example of a concentrator that is before a lot of the schools. And right now, that's also one of the ways that you get incentive dollars. When you look at that, right now we have about $14,000 in incentive money from CTE, from the state funding. And if this would continue, this concentrator could play a part in some of the funding allocation to help us move forward. So that's one thing that we're looking at as well. And you're going to hear more about that as Mr. Ahouse and his team continues to think about what it looks like on paper as well as in reality for our students. Anything else?
No, I was just going to follow that up with, we have a meeting tomorrow morning. We have a couple of our science teachers very excited about the Project Lead the Way biomedical courses. And so we are meeting with Center Grove teacher, or no, we're meeting with the rep, the biomedical rep tomorrow from Project Lead the Way to talk about possibility of offering that CTE coursework moving forward.
So, Mrs. Nally, that the AP dual credit courses, do we offer enough selection there? You said there's 400 students that are going to fit or fall into this category. Do we have enough courses to cover them as well?
That'll be interesting as we move forward with the dual credit certification. I don't know if I would think now we probably do. Yeah. For the students that want to take AP courses and or dual credit courses, I feel like we are meeting those needs, but this has not played into effect yet. And with the certification requirements that are hanging over our heads, that's going to be a game changer too, I think.
That's a significant caveat, that in the dual courses, teachers are going to have their master's degree in that content area after 2022. So the same time this is embarking on our kids, our teachers are going to have their masters in that area. So right now we would have a few of them that would qualify for that master's capacity, but there are many that would not. So then we'd have to ask, can we offer that dual credit course or not? So the curriculum audit is going to be very important. And is it going to also funnel everybody back to this AP domain? In that case, we probably don't have, because we have a nice blend that's going to is taking place right now at the high school. Mr. House, anything you want to add on that, or?
Finding the right route and what's best for them and making sure that we have enough wide variety of stuff that we can fit what kids need and still meet these requirements. Because again, we don't want to funnel everybody down the same path.
I want to highlight these individuals because this is the team of people that put this together. Yes, they have public input and a lot of different resources, but I would ask that Franklin public and also our teachers, our administrators, if we have questions or concerns or comments, this is the group that we need to talk to. That's the only group that's going to be able to they're going to make the recommendation to the school board, to the School Board of Education to approve it, but this is the group that's going to make the decision. So when we have questions about the curriculum audits or how are they going to fund some of these things, I was talking to Southern Hancock superintendent. We were at a CISC meeting and estimated 6 figures added to their budget to make this thing come to fruition. You know, in their school similar to us in size, so if we use their model, that could be a significant impact. Is it a worthy journey? Absolutely. Do we want to provide every kid an opportunity in our domain of individual student growth? Yes. But there's a whole lot of questions behind that to get there to 2023. So that's why I'm bringing it to you today, just as the information gathering. You'll hear more about it in the months and years to come, I'm sure. But this is the group that we would want to reach out to if you have questions or comments. It will be posted with our minutes. And if anybody has anything, contact Mrs. Nally, Mr. Ahouse, or myself, and we can make sure it gets funneled in the correct area as well. Any questions?
Well, I guess I turn that around in terms of you can tell us who to contact, but I don't know that we're educated enough. So I think part of it is I'm looking for your guys' counsel on here are the areas of concern that you would have that we would leverage that to contact these folks. So have you given that any thought in terms of what level of influence you would like to have and then leverage that influence through us to that group?
This morning we talked about it just briefly in our secondary principals meeting. We've not had a chance to get our collective thoughts. I will tell you just my own thought. The work-based and service learning projects is going to be a very arduous task. We're trying to get every kid funneled into that. And how does that play out? So that's one of the areas. You know, like for service learning, is it just one day? So we could have every kid, we could close school down for one day and then go out to the community and do it and then check that box and say, hey, you're service learning, or is it hours of service learning? So those are some things that I think that they need to clarify for us in that domain. That's one that I have a question about, but we will get that to you. I did ask the same thing of the principals team this morning. Said, look at this, get us information back, and we'll go from there.
So when do you think that they're going to make the determination on some of those details? Because we really only got a year to react, right?
Yep.
We've got to, if you're talking about the 7th graders now, we've got to have something by the time they hit high school.
I think the vote is coming up at the end of this month or the 1st of December. And I think you're going to continue to see the vetting of this entire thing as it plays out, because I don't think, to use Darren's words, they've thought about the unintended consequences.
For example,
my next question.
They're mulling around having the ACT, SAT count as the graduation exam. And that was only introduced 12 hours prior to them voting on it. So I do think we have some folks throwing ideas out without complete vetting of their thoughts and the consequences around those thoughts. So that's one of the major concerns that I have.
So another area that perhaps at least to me, it's a Pandora's box, is we changed our salary scales, and yet in order to teach some of these classes, you got to have teachers that have masters, but yet we've changed the rules of the game. So is there, sorry, did I open up Pandora's box? Right,
Heather's saying absolutely.
So the rules of the game has changed, but now they're coming in and saying now these are requirements.
That is correct.
Obviously, I don't understand the logic behind having a master's degree to teach something that defies logic to me. I think I can figure out where that comes from the lobbying effort of the educational institutions, higher ed. But it makes no logic sense to me.
Yep.
But clearly, there's a whole level of unintended consequences associated with this program. So again, it comes back to you got to help us help you.
Yep.
With those kinds of things to have those community.
We will include those in Friday notes as we put our collective thoughts together to move forward. But Darren, you hit on one, the whole master's degree and what that looks like. And now you're seeing places like Indiana University just released about 3 weeks ago information to the high school team that if you are desiring to teach a dual credit, you can go through their program and get the program for free. But it's like, it's not really free. Because, for example, like Janet Kirby, I think, looked at it, and she has too many hours to participate in the program. I believe that she was the one that I talked with, or there's some. So that's what we're talking about. So the great teachers that we have may not qualify until we do some other things around. How many, Steve, right now on your team, how many actually have their teaching appropriately and then would still continue to teach in the dual credit world? Yeah, not many. We have more than that in our dual credit offerings.
So we end up penalizing kids.
Yes.
Because we've got a system and structure in place that isn't rewarded. And so there's a whole lot of problems with this thing. And I guess part of the challenge is understanding of that list of folks, who do we have a relationship with, and that we can at least have a conversation to influence change.
Okay. And also the other one would be John Young and Senator Walker. They're going to have a big say too. That's who's going to be able to push back and help. Obviously, the education, Bob Baining is the chair of that committee. They have a lot of influence. So that's one place where we can go and get some help as well in this journey. The SAT, Deb just talked about, this last round when we adopted the new state test, they kicked out the SAT, so they didn't want it. Because it was one of the things that we were talking about. Dr. McCormick actually articulated many times over, let's use the SAT as the test. No, we're not going to do that. And then lo and behold, as Deb said, 12 hours before we all sign off on this, we added in. I just saw today $5.2 million would be the cost for us to add the SAT to the state of Indiana. It's an interesting world that we're all playing in, and we just want to bring in awareness to the board and to our community as we reach out to make a difference. We'll get talking points to you. We'll make sure that those are out there. We'll confer with our experts at the high school level as well as they help lead in the journey, what we're going to do for our kids.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to action items. The first one being Mr. Mercer.
Once again, save the best for last, I think.
That's right.
I'm in front of you tonight to request approval of emergency authorization or appropriation, resolution. You may recall periodically I come before you. We have monies budgeted in capital projects in an emergency allocation fund. And if we choose to use those, I have to bring the request through you for approval so that we can spend that. These are budgeted funds and nothing is required beyond this emergency appropriation. Over the last several months, Mr. Sewell and I have been discussing a variety of needs related to facilities and a whole litany of items. As Jeff came on, taking over for Bill Doty, it's pushed us toward the end of the year. He has a list he's going to share with you right after the first of the year. There are actually 37 items on his list spread out from 2017 all the way to 2024 with replacement of the football field, and we'll deal with most of those later. I alluded to this in Friday Notes a couple of weeks ago and mentioned some of the items to you. They range in some cases from a relatively small amount of money, a little over $4,000, for a variety of repairs, necessary maintenance or inspections that have to occur on some of our equipment, all the way to HVAC filter replacement, with the largest items being carpeting at CBIS. We found that we had, and I'll defer to Jeff if you have additional questions, we had a mold issue in some carpeting at CBIS, 2 adjacent rooms. One was the library, and the library carpet replacement was well over $20,000. So there's 7 items on this list to be approved tonight. I have requested your permission to spend up to $80,000, which gives us a little bit of wiggle room because it's about $75,000 and some change in case we have any additional expenses along the way. But I am requesting your approval to allow us to complete that work here before the end of the year.
Move for approval.
A motion. Do any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then next up is Neola policies.
Yeah, this is the second reading for our Neola policies. We will have another bundle right before the end of the year, but for these, Roman numeral 1 through Roman numeral 8, we would ask your approval.
Move for approval.
We have a motion. Any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor show by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
And just
Hearing
to
none.
note, we did make the corrections from Mr. Lamb last time with the inserts, so those will be put in as they were presented last month as we go forward with that.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, we'll move on to discussion items. Mrs. Smith, summer enrichment camp.
I'm here to briefly explain our journey with the Summer Enrichment Camp, and it's an extension of Cub Quest. A lot of the pre-work was done by Mr. Doty, thankfully. It stemmed off of his CNE, his FMEA, and I have put a committee in place to do the extension for the Summer Enrichment Camp. So thank you to Mr. Doty for doing a lot of my legwork. I have a variety of team members from certified staff to non-certified staff, some central office folks as well. And it is our project objective. Individual student growth is one of our guiding principles. It's our objective to provide a summer enrichment program with a robust learning experience. The summer enrichment program will provide traditional and non-traditional learning opportunities. And it was originally all stemmed and the pre-work of preschool, Cub Quest, and Cub Care under that umbrella. So it generated from the general fund optimism project, but overall individual student growth is the win here. The project charter or the project tracker is listed on one of the slides. I've done a lot of pre-work, a lot of research, and I've gathered the committee together 2 times to go over some things and get the think tank together, because the timeline is tight if we are going to move forward and have this summer enrichment camp for our students at Franklin Community Schools. So the committee has discovered the best way to keep under that umbrella is to keep the name Summer Cub Quest. It will provide some, I guess, springboarding for the Cub Quest during the school year. And we needed a word before it to keep it all separate when parents call in with questions and so forth. So we just put summer in front of it, Summer Cub Quest. We hope that will generate things for Cub Quest throughout the whole school year to all our students. Because of all the work at Northwood and the middle school,
We thought the location would be best for Custer Baker. Cindy Mappus also serves on the committee, so she's been part of that process. And July was out between the fair and the week before fair and the week after fair and July 4th, so July was completely out. We narrowed it down to July 25th through 29th. We did not want to do it the same week as some of you might know, the program at Franklin College. And that was an identified week that worked well with the school calendar. Right now, we're looking at half day being $120 and full day being $225. That's 5 days, over 3 hours for half day and approximately a little over 6 hours for the full day. We've determined that we'll do an early bird, a multiple student in the FCSC employee discount. And I can answer questions. I can provide you some more information. It really is all about individual student growth and providing traditional and non-traditional opportunities, pulling in some of our experts within our school district that can't do it during the school year. Think of Custer Baker intensives during this week. Think of Camp Invention. I've talked to Dr. Hayden and Megan Burns that's ran that for the last couple of years. We are going to absorb that within this. We didn't make any money from Camp Invention coming to us. That was $245 a week. And we know that we have that pool to pull from because they've had anywhere between 50 and 100 kids in a week-long camp just like this. They just have a wide catalog opportunity to pick from with this summer camp quest. Again, we just recently, we met last week. We broke up into some subcommittees to do some work, to delegate and get some work done. So we would be prepared, if this is all approved, to get the catalog out or get the postings out December so they have a month to complete them and possibly the catalog out the middle of February. So it's a domino effect between the teachers that apply and what we can get in our catalog for individual student growth and those experiences, opportunities for our kids. And, but we also we might end up having to recruit some out of school district people. If I want to do robotics, I might call Mr. Moore and recruit him and see if someone there is interested in teaching it. If I need some karate or some gymnastics and some things to plug in there to have a wide range of opportunities for kids to pick from. They're all dominoes. So those kind of details I can't really provide until later on, but do you have any questions, any items of suggestion?
Katie, if you would, I love that you got this in the Six Sigma format. So thanks for that, right?
Well, I've learned the best.
But you could go back and chastise Mr. Doty that he forgot a line item on that tracker.
Oh, no.
Think about the control phase.
Oh, it's on there. I cut it off for this. It really is.
Never mind.
I cut it off.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's right there on this one. So yes, Mr. Doty did a lot of that work, but we are continuing that and making it into this more intensive week-long summer camp enrichment opportunity for our students. We potentially could offer it to out-of-district people. Our goal is 100 kids the first year. And from then.
What is your age range?
Kindergarten through 6th grade. They're current kindergartners through 6th graders.
Katie, I know there's a lot of detail that's not listed on just 4 slides, but you looked at a number of other programs along the way. Do you want to touch on that, especially as it relates to pricing and things of that nature?
I did some research with programs like this around us. Franklin College offers one that actually Mr. Mercer originally started, and IUPUI, U of I, Zionsville. We even did comparisons with Kickapoo, what parents pay for daycare for a week, kind of that wide range within a summer camp opportunity. And we are actually lower than most of those for the hours. We did an hour comparison with the committee, broke it down so we were fair and reasonable, but also making our ends meet with our teachers and the staff that we will need to make this run.
Sounds like a great program.
So will this come back in December?
Yeah, we'll bring it back in December for your approval. And really what we're approving really as board is the cost. The course offerings are, as Mrs. Smith said, will be determined after that, but we'll look at that cost approval.
Just one question relative to cost and revenue. I don't know that it's a big deal. We make money off this, but hopefully we know what, we're not going to lose money.
Right.
Do we know where that
Threshold is
in terms of number of kids we need to run the program to make it at least?
Mr. Mercer has crunched numbers and scenarios of 5 different scenarios with the amount of students and what we would need to run it. We've even broken it down to what if we have 50 half days and 50 full days? What if we had 25 half days? And so we've broken it down just by scenarios of what we will recruit money-wise. It's more about individual student growth. We're not going to make that much money, but we're not going to do it and not make anything either.
I certainly think it's okay to not have revenue, positive revenue, but you certainly don't want to have
Absolutely.
a negative revenue stream
And we
where it
can,
costs us more to produce and
the angle that we have control of is what we put in the catalog and what's available and what we can cap and have parents pick other classes. So depending on the enrollment and the catalog options, we can kind of control that so we do not lose money as well.
What will the staff be paid for their week-long journey?
We aligned that with something similar to our contract right now, and it's $30 an hour. It's aligned up with our special ed, homebound. It's what we have done in the past for summer school, $30 an hour. Carrie Hoffman's on the committee, so she's doing all those angles with if we're going to do claims or contracts, all that stuff. So that's her delegation of making sure we get all those angles met. But the committee thought that was fair. That was one of the first things we discussed because that really crunched the numbers and the fees from there.
Thank you. Okay, we move on to board and administrative comments. I actually have one thing I would like to just put out there. As everybody probably knows, in the past 3 weeks, we've tragically lost 2 of our students from the high school. And I just would like to say on behalf of the board, I'd like to extend our condolences and our prayers to those families and let them know that we're thinking of them, and also to let the public know that there are family funds that you can make a donation to. And if you would like to do that, you need to contact Mr. Ahouse at the high school and he can direct you down the path that you need to go. But thank you for doing that, Mr. Ahouse. Do you have any other comments? Okay, we move on to calendar.
Just a couple highlights. Wednesday will be at Needham Elementary. Mr. Purley will be hosting the quarterly board visit. I think we're going to get here student ambassadors. We're going to see a little bit about his VIP program that introduces parents about how to interact and be a part of the journey and their team. And then just a reminder on Thanksgiving break is the 22nd through 24th. And also for the board, traditionally from the central office, we've closed the office and the staff and team have worked those hours additionally. So they actually get Wednesday off, but they've already put in either comp time or whatever. So just want to make that aware. I do believe that Mrs. Casting may have to work with the daycare. Is that correct?
Cup Care is still in session on Wednesday.
Okay. We will have a couple events coming up with the holiday seasons. The Christmas choir show is the 7th to the 8th. If you've not heard them sing, you want to get your tickets early because it will sell out and it'll be a great show. It might be a long show, but it'll be a great show. And then we do have our central office celebration, Christmas celebration back at Crystal Springs Barn. And we are going to have, I believe, a quartet of singers. We're working on that group again, as well as instrumental group. For that's admin and board, and that is going to be on the 13th and same time, right? 6 and 6:30 and Santa is coming. All right. And then lastly, we do have Coogee students coming again. The first week we're back, for second semester. Greg Moore has spearheaded this for many years now. So we will have them. They'll be coming to the high school and middle school. They are bringing a smaller contingency this year due to some economic things that happened in Coogee. But we will look forward to hosting them. So just wanted to make sure we share that as well.
The band concert.
And the band concert is December 14th here. And our auditorium, another great opportunity to hear a group of kids that play quite well.
Right, thank you. All right, public comments. At this time, if anybody from the public has a comment. Okay, seeing none.
Move to adjourn.
All right, thank you all.